All right, joining us for more on this bromance that is unraveling before our very eyes is former diplomat and international relations expert Kingsley Makhubela. Good afternoon, Mr. Makhubela. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, many of us have been glued to our phone screens because the feud between Donald Trump and Elon Musk is just escalating by the minute. But drama aside, are you in the least bit surprised that there would be a fallout between these two, given what many had said were going to be obvious areas of contest, such as the electrical vehicle mandate that was ended?
Well, no, Fundo, thanks, Fundo, thanks very much. You know, no one anticipated a fallout to this magnitude. However, we've been looking for possible fallout given the behavior of Musk bringing his child to the White House and really taking away the stature of the White House. One was quite aware that it's a matter of time that President Trump would start to resent this kind of behavior in the White House. Americans, they hold the White House in high esteem, but to see it being reduced to a nursery, quite definitely they would take an exception at that. So that was inevitable.
But the president,
but having said that,
pardon me for interjecting there, but the president himself is not a career politician who one would say has conducted himself in a way that would say he holds the Oval Office in that high stature and high regard in any event. He's not as diplomatic as many would say.
Well, you know, he's very unconventional, but he has behaved in a manner that really upholds and protects the stature of the White House. He has jealously protected the White House because he understands that the White House is a source of his power. So he's unlikely to really diminish or undermine the credibility of the White House. He won't do that. And yeah.
And
but
then,
I'm saying...
Yeah, you can continue.
The biggest feud here, Fundo, that we are so much grappling with, would this lead to a change of policy vis-a-vis South Africa?
Yes.
My view, it's no. If you look at what is under dispute here, it's basically to raise the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling currently is at 36.1 trillion, and the debt ceiling is regulated by Congress. It's the function of the legislative branch, not the executive branch. So it has been raised to this 36.1 sometimes in January this year. And to really raise it again, looking at what Trump is requesting, it's about $4 trillion to put into the debt ceiling, which would take the debt ceiling to close to 40 trillion, which has taken a lot of Republicans by surprise. And from the information that is coming up, it seems that if the debt ceiling was to be raised, the United States would pay close to $550 billion, close to more than $500 billion in servicing the interest of the debt. And Elon Musk is quite correct that the United States is running bankrupt. As to whether his behavior and so on, it's acceptable, it's a total different matter. But it has rekindled the discussion around the U.S. debt and the debt ceiling and how to manage the federal spending. If you look at the breakdown of the 2025 federal spending, there are issues that a lot of lawmakers are saying they can do without. But Donald Trump has a mandate from his electorate to carry on.
And it's quite interesting because that position of Elon Musk seems to be supported by non-partisan analysts who say actually this big, beautiful bill will not solve the problems. In fact, it's false. It will create more problems. But I just want to take you to that element of where we fit in as South Africans. Because you seem to hold the view, some are watching closely with keen interest, thinking that this fallout perhaps might lead to something good for South Africans, because there's always been a view that has been held in certain quarters that Elon Musk was probably the one who was perpetuating this whole narrative of a white genocide in South Africa, and that had created the tensions between the United States and America, and South Africa. But beyond that, also there was also, of course, the other narrative that perhaps this push of a white genocide was meant to take South Africa to the negotiating table to talk about Starlink. But if we're watching this fallout now, many are of the view that perhaps if he's kicked to the curb, then you've got a Donald Trump who's now an independent thinker, and perhaps when South Africa again requests the ear of Donald Trump, he might hear them better within this 90-day period when we are to negotiate on the tariffs.
The dispute is around domestic issues in the United States. And I think as South Africans, we should dissuade ourselves from the view that we would benefit from this fallout. It has nothing to do with that. The American foreign policy and interests is still defined in the same manner. If you look at what has been going on in the last few days, you realize the Secretary of State has made bold pronouncements on foreign policy issues. One of the issues is the ICC sanction. You know, he sanctioned some of the judges, and the United States has vetoed a Security Council resolution on Israel in the last few days that intended to bring peace. So those are the core issues that are creating a dispute between South Africa and the United States. It has to do with the national interests of the United States and the security interests of the United States. Actually, President Mbeki put it so well that if we start looking at what is in the interest of the American, it's what guides their action. And their action is not going to change. Their national interests and security interests won't change because of this dispute vis-a-vis South Africa. So we'll continue to have this dispute with the Americans. The people who are able to manage this quite strategically. Take our neighbor here, the Namibians, Fundo. The Namibians have decided to take out all American companies in the mining industry. Why are they doing that? Because America produces, I beg your pardon, because Namibia produces 11% of the global uranium, which the Americans dearly need. They can't do without. The Chinese have managed the question of the rare earths. That's why there's a discussion between the Americans and the Chinese now. So the Americans are likely to implement the sanctions on the Chinese. Even the tariffs, they are unlikely to go on because the Chinese have the capability to shut down completely the American automobile industry because of the rare earth. So what is that we have that we can use to leverage and bargain with the United States? That's what we need to find. Where are our sources of power as a country and manage that very well.
And then just in closing, your views on what we're seeing between the Trump administration and Harvard right now, because we know that as it stands, you've got foreign students that are going to be barred from actually getting foreign visas.
Well, they've imposed visas. They've started even to bar certain countries from entering. Most of these countries are African countries. So you're likely to see this American behavior going forward, Fundo. So I don't think we need to cry foul over that. They define their own national interests and their security interests, and we must define our own national and security interests and see how do we use that to bargain against other powers.
But is that not upending this whole concept of globalization here? Because again, we were told that what we're seeing or witnessing in Europe with that wave of protectionism, that it's going away. But again, now we're seeing it firm and strong in the United States. If we're going to say that whatever they decide to do, they're barring a lot of African countries from receiving the visas. It's now the Harvard students. I mean, this is the world of academia that is now being targeted. So what happens to this whole concept of globalization that was spoken of so many years ago?
The Trump administration is inward looking. They're looking at their interests. They really don't care about anyone else. So that's quite clear. And we have to start really dealing with this thing that the Americans are going to look into their interests and look at our own interests. I mean, we keep on holding on to the question of AGOA. AGOA is as good as gone. You're not going to see that. So there are other issues that we need to look at in terms of managing our relations with the United States. What is the leverage that we have? One of the things that we have, Pundo, is a platinum. We're producing a lot of platinum that is required in the motor industry. We should use that to bargain. The Chinese have used rare earths to bargain with the Americans, and they're getting away with that. And we must look at the sources of our strength and our power to use when we project our relations with the United States.
Kingsley, a very interesting take. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. That's Dr. Kingsley Makhubela. He's a former diplomat and international relations expert.